The Honest Money podcast is brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. We consider everything to give you the advantage. It's the future of investing. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.
Welcome to Honest Money. I'm Warren Ingram and he's
Pieter Villiers.
Peter's YouTube channel is called Money Marks, and you can get a lot more content there from Pieter. But today we're talking about retirement funds. And I think it's a big topic because a lot of people are quite divided in opinion. Some people think they're amazing, and some people hate them. And then there's been some recent changes in legislation which has freaked some people out and made others happy. So I think we've got a fair amount to talk about. But maybe just to kick off, we need to kind of explain what these things are.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. So I think like the three main retirement funds, when we refer to retirement funds, we mostly talk about retirement annuities, pension funds, provident funds, and preservation funds. I think those are the four main ones. So pension or provident fund, there used to be differences back in the day, but for purposes of today, it's mostly treated the same way. It's basically when you are employed by someone and they've got some pension fund at work that you are now allowed to join. You contribute, your employer contribute, and that gets invested. By the time you retire, you can then take 1/3 of that out, and the other 2/3 gets invested into either a living or a life annuity. So that's kind of like when you are part of an employer group scheme. But if you don't have that, or you feel like you want to supplement that, then a retirement annuity, kind of like a personal pension fund that you can take out and you can invest on your own on one of the other platforms. It gets treated very similar in the sense that you contribute every month, and then after the age of 55, you can now withdraw money from that 1/3, and then the other 2/3 you can invest. And now with the two-pot system, it's a little bit more nuanced than that we'll touch on later on. But I think that's kind of in a nutshell what it is. And the reason why they exist is the government wants us to provide for ourselves when we are older. If we don't, we become reliant on the system, which we all know is already constrained. And so they provide some nice incentives for us to now actually put money into these vehicles that are kind of locked into the long term for mostly, so that we can one day take care of ourselves and not be reliant on a bigger system in South Africa.
Yeah, and I think if we look at the regulations and the laws around retirement funds over the last few years, actually become better and more sensible and more incentivizing to those of us that want to put money in retirement. And so I think maybe just the two things that for me are extremely valuable there are, one, that in the old days people would have said, no, I don't want to put my money into retirement funds because they limit where I can invest. I can't invest too much in shares, I can't invest money overseas. All of that's changed. So number one, about 45%, if I remember correctly, of your retirement funds can be invested internationally. So your global exposure inside your retirement fund is already, for most people, already good enough. And when I see what the fund managers are doing, they don't even always use all of that maximum capacity. They might decide only to put 30%, depending on how they view the rand or global markets, etc. So 45% is a good number. Secondly, you can. I mean, it's a big number. If you take all of your exposure to shares plus property companies, it's a large proportion of your assets in a retirement fund can be invested in very high growth assets. You don't need to be ultra conservative in a retirement fund. You can actually use it as a growth asset. And so already I think that's a huge change. Like I think that choice is good. I know the local stock market and the local fund managers are bleak because of the international capacity, which has increased so much. They would have liked us to be forced to put a lot more in the local economy and the local market, but choice is important there. And then we're not going to get into too much detail on laws, but then more recently there was this thing called two-pot. It's got nothing to do with marijuana. It's all about how we invest. And really simply what it now allows us to do is, going forward, future contributions, we will be able to access a portion of those contributions if we have an emergency. I think that accessibility, the ability to access some of your money is really important for some people. The moment you tell someone you're not allowed to do this, that's exactly what they want to do. So the government is saying, okay, by all means, you can access a portion. What's really important for me, and I think it's a regulation that's valuable, is you're not going to be able to access all of your money if you change jobs going forward. And unfortunately, lots of people in the past would have gone into a position, they would have worked for a company for a few years, they get into debt somewhere else, and then they got a provident fund, they quit their jobs, which is a disaster. Then they go and access all of the money in their provident fund, and they might be giving away almost half of that to pay off a short-term debt. What happens then? They don't get another job. They get into even bigger issues. So the laws have changed to say, yes, you can access some of your money, but no, you can't get all of it. Most of it needs to be set aside for the long term. And I think that for me, those things are really valuable to encourage people to save. Over and above the tax benefits, there are huge tax benefits. Now, some of the big kind of obvious criticisms have been dealt with. I'm really happy with them.
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes as time has gone by where it started out and what we have today available. And I guess most people's opinions around retirement funds were maybe based on certain isolated events that may have caused them to have a negative outlook. But I think, as you mentioned, a lot of those things have been addressed. And the reality for many South Africans is their pension or provident funds is the only provision they are making, because those things go off automatically before they get the salary. So they don't really have a choice, which is sometimes a good thing. They're already providing for themselves, and then they can spend what's left over. So that already forces them kind of in a good way to make provision for retirement from an early age. But I guess let's touch on the benefits of an RA, and then we can talk a little bit on the drawbacks that we've seen. You've already mentioned that although the asset allocation is a little bit constricted to 75% equities and 45% offshore, that is still a very good balanced portfolio for even for long-term growth. It's not that 100% offshore that some people want, but not everyone needs that necessarily. So I think it kind of gets you the best of both worlds. And then also the taxes, the tax savings. Can you maybe elaborate a bit on how that works?
Yeah, so I think maybe the first one, which most people don't really pay attention to, is all of the money that you put into your retirement fund grows without any tax. So that's something people forget is, like if you've got a normal investment, a normal share or a unit trust or an exchange traded fund, the growth in that will at some point attract capital gains tax. Or if you've got money in cash, it will attract income tax. All of the money you put in your retirement fund, free of income tax, free of dividends tax, free of capital gains tax. So that's a very nice benefit. In addition, and you're going to have to help me with the maths here because that's your strong point, not mine. In addition, if I contribute money to a retirement fund, SARS says, that's great. Thank you very much for the contribution. If you can go up, I think it's to 27.5% of your taxable salary or your taxable income. So your interest, your salary, rent, if you earn rent, all of that, 27.5% of that can be used as a deduction against your income tax. If you're a mega earner, I think it's 350,000 is the most you can contribute to a retirement fund to get that tax benefit. So they give you a tax benefit for contributing to your long-term savings. They actually reduce your income tax rate in the year that you make those contributions. Not sure if I got it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, I think like if you're in the 31% marginal tax bracket and up, that really becomes powerful because now you earn a salary, you put it into your, say, retirement annuity, you get a tax refund when the tax season comes. Now you can pour that refund back into an RA, and the next year you get a refund, you put that back, and you kind of have the snowball effect that becomes incredibly powerful. But also with the tax-free growth, I think what we can also add that is estate duty, where it's outside of the estate. Yeah. So if you were to pass away, and what SARS will do is they'll look at all of the assets you own, put that together, and if it's above 3.5 million, they can charge 20% estate duty on that, and retirement annuities or retirement funds fall outside of that, and that could potentially become an incredible saving for high earners on that at that level once you reach that. It's also when you one day retire, that 1/3 that you can access that gets taxed on a specific retirement tax table, which is more beneficial than if you were to withdraw early on, as people used to do before Tupot. And also the money that you then earn through what's called a living or life annuity, that gets taxed according to your normal income. So it's kind of like a tax deferred, but that tax-free growth for 20, 30, 40 years that really compounds over time. And I think people kind of miss that many times when they just look at the potential drawbacks. I think that is a very strong, especially if you reinvest. If you get a tax refund, don't go and spend it, reinvest it, because then that becomes incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and I think you're making a really big point around the estate duty as well, because I think a lot of people who accumulate good money in their lifetime, they become, as they get older, they get more and more fixated on avoiding estate duty, and so understanding that I mean the estate duty implication of a retirement fund is zero estate duty. Just to elaborate on that, I mean, I want to not elaborate, I want to reinforce that point. If you're sitting with a retirement fund of 30 million rand and you've got 3 kids, I mean, you can let them take that over. They become the owners of that. And if you do it a third, they're each getting 10 million rand of investments tax-free on estate duty. Yes, they're going to have to pay some tax when they draw money out in the future. Great. That's not such a big issue. But it becomes a great way to set up your family for the next generation. So I think it's a real big tax benefit over and above then all the other things we've spoken about. We're not saying, and I mean, I don't want to create the impression that you are saying, look, put every cent of all of your money in your entire life into your retirement funds. But we are, I mean, I feel really strongly that people ignore retirement funds to their own detriment.
Yeah. They kind of get fixated on the small things that, yes, they play a role, and we'll touch on that in a second, but the vast majority of the benefits that you get from contributing at least something towards a retirement fund really adds up over time. I also think another thing that I don't think a lot of people know about is the creditor protection. So if you are, let's say, a business owner, an entrepreneur, and you own businesses, you always have the risk that something might fail and someone comes after you, that you've got some debts that you need to repay. Retirement funds are protected by law from those types of debts. So I think mitigating that risk potentially also adds up. Not sure how many people actually uses that at the end of the day, but still good to know if you are in that space, entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a business, where you've acted legally, but things have gone wrong against you, I mean, you and your family could be incredibly grateful for that protection.
Yeah,
it is a very good point.
Yeah, and then also with any investment, there's always the flip side, the drawbacks. So we talked about the Regulation 28, they call it, that limits the asset allocation, which, yes, potentially for a youngster that wants to go 100% offshore, equity could be a factor to consider, but there's other investments that can do that as well to kind of complement your RA. But from my experience, at least from what I've seen, most people are cautious of retirement annuities for 2 things. Firstly is the fees. It used to be that the policy-based retirement annuities that still exist today, and maybe you can elaborate on that a bit more. That was what was available back in the day, and so expensive that people would invest every month throughout their entire lifetime, and they reach retirement and they don't have much to show for it. Not maybe because they didn't invest enough, just because fees have really eaten into them. But that has also changed now with new generation, the linked investment service providers. You can maybe touch a bit on how your experience has been being in the industry for 20 plus years.
Yeah. I am an old man now. So I mean, when I started in the industry in the late 1990s, I hated retirement because they were almost exclusively sold by insurance agents working for insurance companies, and all of those things were policies. And so it was not unusual to find someone paying away 25 or 30% of their contributions over the lifetime of the RA in upfront commission. And to me, that just was absolute wealth destruction. So I mean, I think it's a very valid point. If someone's worried about fees, and saying, no, but retirement funds or retirement annuities are expensive. That's true for a portion of retirement. I think, if you look at them nowadays, as you said, new generation, I mean, you can buy a retirement annuity from a unit trust company. And typically they're going to charge fees on an as and when basis. And I like that because now you've got the option, firstly, of a lot of transparency to see what you're actually. And number 2, no upfront fee. And I feel I almost want to kind of be very clear. I don't think you should pay upfront fees ever on a retirement. And I know that's going to upset the insurance agents. This is called honest money. We'll stay with that. So I think paying your fees, you should pay fees. It's fair to pay a fair fee to the product provider, to the person giving advice, no problem. As and when is great. Why? Because you should have the option, and that's maybe my second point here, to be able to move your retirement annuity from one product provider to another. You can do these transfers, but only if they don't charge you big upfront fees where now suddenly you're going to pay a penalty to move it. I hate that. So I think it was a valid criticism. It can be a valid criticism that the fees are too high. But if you do your homework and you make sure that you're investing in a retirement annuity that charges as and when fees, you can be clear on what those fees are. And secondly, that you don't get locked into something where you get a massive penalty. So it was a good criticism in the past. It can still be, but I think that nowadays a bit of homework, you can't use that as a reason not to invest in RAs. I would say it should be a reason to invest in the right one.
Yeah, absolutely. And fees are important. When we kind of look about a couple of factors that we need to think, asset allocation, which we covered in a previous episode, taxes and fees. I think those three are kind of the ones that really kind of move the needle either side of the equation. So fees are important, and to easily kind of summarize the fees of an investment is just request what is known as the EAC, the effective annual cost, and that will show you the investment management fee that gets paid by the fund manager that chooses the combination of assets, financial advisor fee, the person that's giving advice, and then the admin fee for the platform. With these policy-based RS, I've seen on that there's always that fourth one, that other fee. It's not really well defined what that means, but that's usually for marketing and commission. And if you see that fee and you see an EAC of 3 plus 4, 5, 6, 7, I've seen horrible statements, 20+% of fees. There's no way that you can build wealth investing in those things, because you just think if your RA gets 10%, which is be very good, and inflation is 5 to 6%, and you're paying another 5% in fees, you're moving backwards. So fees are important, but it's also important to note that you can't pay no fees. You have to pay fees, and there has to be a fair fee for the service that you get provided for. Just don't get taken for a ride. And my hope is that as people become more educated, these old legacy type of things will get phased out. And sometimes if you are in one of these unfortunate RAs and you want to move, there might be a penalty fee to move, but most of the time that's actually in your best interest to move, pay the penalty now and just have lower fees for the long term. But you need to have a proper analysis done for that to understand what the implications will be. It's not as easy as just say, let's move. There's where you need some help.
And I think if you want to find out what that penalty is, you can ask your product provider for a Section 14 transfer quote.
Yeah.
And make sure that they understand it's a quote. You're not telling them to do a Section 14 transfer so that they don't just whack you with a penalty. But that's it's a very important number. And I think understanding what that value is and what the percentage is. So if your RA is worth R1 million, and they say to you, well, we're going to charge you 5,000 Rand, you might think, geez, that's it's a huge amount of money just to pay away as a penalty. But you've got another 15 years of retirement to go, or years till retirement, and you can save yourself 2% a year in fees. You should be glad to pay that 5% to get out of that retirement fund. So I think get that Section 14 quote.
Yeah.
And I just want to, I like your point around that you must pay some fee. We've seen, let's not name them, but we've seen some big product providers recently drastically upping their fees to clients. Why? Because they were charging incredibly low fees. I felt there was kind of something dodge going on, not criminal, but just that they were almost buying business by charging incredibly low fees to get a whole lot of clients on their base, which they've now done. Now they increase their fees and upsetting everybody. That doesn't make sense to me. Pay a fair fee where you know it's a sustainable fee. You know the product provider is going to be around for some time. And you know that you're paying to get good service, good administration, good regulation of your funds, and be happy with that. That's how life works. If you pay nothing, you need to know you are paying. You just don't know how.
Yeah. That's a big danger. If you think it's for free, then you're in trouble, because then there's some hidden fee cooked into some T's and C's that you don't understand. And even for us, some of the products that I try to understand, it's like 400 pages of jargon that I don't even understand, and I don't know how these products exist. But in any case, that's a topic for another day. What's important is whenever you decide to invest, whether it's in a retirement fund or another investment vehicle, understand what this will entail and talk about the fees, but understand that you can't get away from that. You can't get away from taxes. You can't get away from fees. That is part of life, but just make an informed decision and try to get as far as you reasonably could. And if someone helps you, they should also be paid a fee for their service, just like we all provide value to society and get paid money in return. That's how the economy works.
I think that's a fantastic point to wrap up. I'm having a look, and I think we've used up our time. I'm Warren. He's Pieter from Money Marks. Thanks so much for listening.
The Honest Money podcast is brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. We consider everything to give you the advantage. It's the future of investing. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.